think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So I've discovered something new. This is not wine. This is Adam Carolla's Mangria.
Mangria.
It is 38 proof sangria.
What did you do to the notes?
Fuck.
Oh, I undid what I already did, so...
Oh. What had you done?
I put in Huckleberry Finn and Alex Jones as co-hosts.
Hi.
Alex Jones is the co-host?
Yes.
So is that his counterpart? Is that someone who's like rational and calm?
Joan Alexis.
Or is it like, are they just like histrionic as fuck? Like, what do they do exactly?
They believe only the government and... No, I don't know.
Believe only the government.
They believe everyone but Alex Jones? I don't know. I can't...
Damn you, Arno. You're a bastard.
What is that?
What's all week long I've been singing that. I've been singing that Leech's song from that recent Caustic Soda episode all week. So
I did not watch that show, so I don't know it.
it's a podcast. It's not one to watch, but you have missed a fantastic song.
There you go. I added some important information to the notes there.
Excellent. So the only segment I didn't fill out that I wanted to was the ritual sacrifice. But I'll just wing it here. Plenty for that.
Ritual sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck is that on the notes?
He found it. Right, we jarden ein järdagum teurskninge frym gefrunon hudaitlingas elen fremedon avskild chefing cheferna freatum monegum meitum meelseletta oftea exiot erlas sidan erast werd fjärsjaft funden hefes fröfrögevad vägs undervård
Gesundheit.
Minuten
And that's how I gave birth to an alien.
Där sittendra over 100 hirrenskjolde gomban gildan. That was good killing.
Was this a Lovecraft moment? What are we doing here exactly?
That is the opening of Beowulf in the original English.
Sweet.
Me.
You child.
Beowulf. Me. Ask me how I feel about classic literature.
How do you feel about classic literature?
It's over fucking hyped as fuck. That's what I feel. That's the very simplistic explanation. I can go on a very long rant about it, which I've done many times, and I'll
Oh, we're live. Oh.
I'll forego that this time. But yeah, that's my simplistic explanation.
Do we have any
Classic literature
viewers?
is way overrated. We have one person watching, so if I've just offended you, well, you're gonna love this show.
Hi, Susan.
Who's that twinkle-toed communist cocksucker?
What?
I beg your pardon, I'm not a commie. Oh, I mean, wait.
My toes do not twinkle. I think I'm ready to go if you guys are ready to go.
Alright, let me start recording then. Dun, dun.
Yay!
Yeah,
Audacity
idea,
power
I am
activate.
recording.
I should probably do that too. Okay.
Audacity power activate.
Audacity is recording.
Is it now?
Irreverent Skeptics on KMLA.
It's 5.9.
If you're caller number 5, we will tell you to shut the fuck up.
Politely. politely tell you to shut the fuck up if you're caller 5.
Alrighty.
Are we good? Are we on? What are we doing?
I'm up.
On
I'm ready.
the count of 5.
Wait, did you just say you're up? What?
I'm up.
He's up.
I'm up.
Okay.
Jesus, that's not that kind of show, Mike. Fuck.
Five.
Oh, well, then I'm out of here. I'm done. Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Okay. On the count of 3, I want you to give your best death gurgle. 1, 2, 3.
And so there's that. So welcome everyone to the Irreverent Skeptics Morbid Podcast Edition. Today we're talking about scary ways to die.
Scary!
Woo-hoo. Joining us today are Arno.
Hello, I want to die from radiation poisoning.
Mike Bowler, apparently with an erection.
Or not, maybe. Who knows? Yes, that's me. I get a hardy every time I do these shows.
We could maybe edit that. Maybe.
Oh God, Jesus Christ, God.
Michael McElroy.
I just died in your arms tonight.
And I'm John Omby, and so there's that. So, any current events or other such nonsense to discuss before we get to the topic of the day?
We got our first dick joke in like 5 seconds.
In the intro, I got the first dick joke
that's a
in the
record.
intro. That's excellent.
Yeah, that's definitely an important current story.
Maybe next time I could be like, "Welcome to the Irreverent Skeptics Cockcast." You know, like, bam, first sentence.
Welcome to the Irreverent Skeptics podcast.
Might get more listeners.
Maybe. We're gonna have 2.5 listeners then, maybe.
Hey, the Amateur Skeptics does the masturbation moment, so hey.
Speaking of amateur skeptics, apparently this week, Dumbass and Brandy are both on location / at large. So perhaps if and when they're back next week, they can report on their findings of whatever it is they're finding.
Exciting.
Yes.
Their findings of what they find of whatever it is they're finding.
Mm-hmm. So should we talk about scary ways to die?
I think we should.
Ooh,
Yep,
scary ways
probably.
to die. So if you're like me and you've played Fallout, for thousands of hours over the years, then radiation you're at least somewhat familiar with in a comical sense.
Yeah, it's the popping sound you hear from your Geiger counter.
Oh
And it's
yes.
delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a lot of it by drinking water from toilets.
Or swimming in the wrong lake. That'll do it as well.
Yep.
So radiation poisoning, it does sound nice and terrifying. Although it is pretty rare, it's a particularly nasty way to go. A bit more info on what radiation poisoning does to you. Earlier symptoms of treatable radiation sickness are usually nausea and vomiting. As you get to the more severe exposure, the symptoms are, there's a list here, nausea and vomiting within mere minutes, diarrhea, headache, fever, dizziness and disorientation, weakness, fatigue, hair loss, bloody vomit and stools, infections, poor wound healing, low blood pressure, and I'm guessing glowing pee.
Seems legit.
At least you can, yeah, why not?
And I think your teeth are going to fall out.
There's that.
That's the name, right? That's what the game's named after. Fall out. No.
Ah.
Wah, wah. So a couple of treatments for radiation sickness. Potassium iodide. It's a non-radioactive form of iodine because iodine is essential for proper thyroid function. The thyroid becomes a destination for iodine in the body. If you have internal contamination with radioactive iodine, radioiodine, your thyroid will absorb radioiodine just as it would other forms of iodine. So treatment with potassium iodine may fill, quote, vacancies in the thyroid and prevent absorption of radioiodine.
It's pretty clever.
Yada, yada, yada. It helps. So, Prussian blue, which is an interesting name for this, is a type of dye that binds to particles of radioactive elements known as cesium and thallium. This, I think I first heard of this after the 2011 Fukushima disaster.
Wasn't
the first time I heard about
gas that they use in the gas chambers in the Holocaust?
Prussian blue.
I could have sworn that was
That's
in
Go on.
Zyklon B.
Because I know that there was some totally off subject here. There's some duo of white.
No, that's a pretty
supremacist
awful way to die.
Girls, like a twin girls who used to tour, and they made the news because they were these like 12-year-old girls in a white supremacist group, and they called themselves Prussian Blue when they sang.
Huh.
No, Cyclone B
I'm
was
not that familiar with.
Yep.
I'm not that familiar with with Nazi movements and singers. I don't know. Were you undercover investigating? Be honest. Come on.
No. I would not fit in very well at a white supremacist gathering.
There's something about him. Let's see. The last one.
They used
good
old
God, if I can.
during Fukushima to prevent radiation poisoning.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
How dare you?
The office phone is ringing. Okay, so back on track. DTPA, I'm going to try and pronounce this. Diethylnitramine pentacetic acid. That first word, I got really close, I think. Anyway, so this substance binds to metals. DTPA binds to particles with radioactive elements, plutonium, americium, and curium. The radioactive particles pass out of the body and urine, thereby reducing the amount of radiation absorbed. That sounds useful. Some famous cases of radiation poisoning. My favorite, if you will, or one I'm familiar with anyway, is a famous case of radiation poisoning in history. It was the Radium Girls. These were female workers who painted watch dials with glow-in-the-dark that was infused with radium at the United States Radium Factory in Orange, New Jersey around 1917. This was something we mentioned last week briefly, and I think that's kind of how we worked our way into this topic for this week. So anyway, the workers had been told that the paint was harmless, and they ingested deadly amounts of radium by licking their paintbrushes to keep the points fine for the detailed painting. Some even painted their nails and teeth with the glowing paint, which before researching this, I'd forgotten about that. Which, at first, that's kind of cool. Like, oh, look, my nails and my teeth are glowing, but, your jaw's going to fall off in a year or so. That's, I guess, the downside.
It's quickly rotting away.
And suddenly you have explosive diarrhea.
In fact, it's super critical explosive diarrhea.
Glowing diarrhea. It's a light show.
Come see the fireworks.
So a little more about this. So the company hired around 70 women to perform a variety of tests associated with handling the radium, while the company's scientists and owners who were familiar with the effects of radium were really careful to avoid exposure. Like the chemists used tongs and masks and lead screens when they would interact with the radium. And U.S. Radium had even distributed literature to the medical community describing the dangerous nature of radium. That said, they repeatedly told the workers that it was safe to be around. There was nothing to worry about. This won't cause you any problems. So how
that's not
from this, and this is where
that's not just being ignorant, but just being a fucking asshole.
Oh yeah, that was not ignorance. That was just these people don't matter to us. They're expendable. They did not care about these workers.
That reminds me of something I'd heard this week about how back around the turn of the century, how much child labor was a big thing. And they used to have people as young as 3.5 years old acting as chimney sweeps in some countries. And apparently in Britain around the late 1800s, it wasn't illegal to kidnap children. People who stole children and conscripted them to work ended up getting charged with stealing the clothes, but not the kids. Completely off topic, but nice tangent.
That's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. So anyway, now for the horrific part of this, as if it wasn't bad enough already, the Radium Girls suffered from anemia, bone fractures, and necrosis of the jaw. If you do a little Google searching, especially Google image searching for Radium Girls, you can see some pictures of some of the after effects of this, and it is pretty gruesome. I would go ahead and warn you now, if you're going to Google search any of the topics we're talking about, you're going to find some pretty gruesome shit. So anyway, for a while, the doctors, dentists, and researchers complied with requests from U.S. Radium and other watchdog companies to withhold data detailing the radiation sickness. At the behest of the companies, workers' deaths were attributed by medical professionals to other causes. Often syphilis was cited as a convenient way to smear the reputations of the women. And
Talk about being even more of a dick.
Yeah, not only are you're putting them in danger recklessly, like, oh, not only that, let's make them look really bad too. yeah, they're a bunch of whores who deserve to die from
It's their
radiation
own
poisoning is what we're going to tell people. Like, that's just terrible.
I kind of wonder, though, wouldn't it be obvious when you come to work and people are exhibiting a radiation sickness on their skins and teeth?
Well, it might be now, but at the time in 1917, your average person didn't have any idea of what radiation sickness was.
You got to wonder though, because if this company had been distributing this information about the dangers and safety hazards of radium to medical personnel, how did they not know? How did nobody ever tell them this is something that they should be afraid of? I don't know.
Well, according to this, if this is what I would say, if doctors, dentists, and other researchers were complying with U.S. Radium's request, I'm guessing somehow they were the medical professionals they would see were associated with the company that hired them. That's what I'm guessing anyway. So.
Yeah, but I think the symptoms are pretty visible. So if you're the guy who comes to work for the first time and you look at the other people who've been there longer than you and they have like a shortage of hair and nails and such, wouldn't you kind of go, yeah, I'm not going to work here?
Well, I'm guessing this is kind of a short-lived deal because like what I've read said the company had hired around 70 women, and it seems like that was all around the same time. So I'm guessing this was kind of a single run deal. Where okay, so we're painting all these watches. Then when something comes to light, I'm guessing maybe after that they moved on to something else. I'm not really sure. I don't recall well enough.
Well, there was also West Clock in LaSalle, Illinois, had where they used that radium paint.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I think it was pretty common. Let's see, yeah, because in the West Clock, well, I think I mentioned in the last show, it was when it began to realize that people were getting these tumors they were getting tumors on their tongues, the lower jaw was going disintegrating. They eventually found a new way to do a glow-in-the-dark dials, and what they did with they shut down that plant, and this was actually they shut that down in 1945, I think. Most of it went into a landfill near Ottawa. Actually, you could drive by there on Route 6. You could see the biohazard and the radiation placards along the Route 6 as you go into Ottawa. But the desks and chairs that they used to paint them got donated to the local high school, and the local high school kids were coming up with these, symptoms. Not as serious as what the women workers were going through.
Mm-hmm.
But they were getting, there was a cluster of cancers that came up. So they seemed to think that radiation, the gift that keeps on giving. But also in 1917, medical science in the United States was not all that great. Most of the real work was happening in Europe, mostly Germany, France, and somewhat England. The United States kind of ignored what was going on in Europe. Just very few doctors were getting European training. Most of the time, all you needed to get a become a doctor from Harvard was, I think it was like $100, and you sat in 6 weeks of classes. And
really?
That made that you were technically a doctor.
That's surprising.
But that changed with the AMA coming online, the discoveries, germ theory coming out of Europe, and actually John Hopkins had brought, when they set up their hospital and the medical training there, that's when everything started changing. But you still had doctors who, they learned the old-fashioned way. They were like apprentices with their $100 degrees, and of course, going by their experience, they never experienced radiation or actually a lot of things. Even most of them, even because you can see it today that there's still those doctors that disagree with that germ theory is the cause of disease. So it's there's actually there's a real good book. The Great Influenza was about the influenza outbreak in 1917, 18, 19, and really that was the first time science was applied to a viral outbreak, and it's pretty neat. And it's really where everything kind of came together, and science became more important than science-based medicine became more accepted than evidence-based medicine.
It's interesting to mention the turn of the century and all the changes in medicine going on, because there actually used to be this big cottage industry about, like an alt-med style industry about radiation, where people would make all sorts of patent medicines where they do things like lace water with radon or radium, and they tell people to drink it, and it would be some sort of miraculous cure-all sort of thing. But from what I can tell, what it typically cured people of was not having cancer. So, in the case of this one guy, the fantastically named Eben McBurney Byers, who lived from 1880 to 1932, he had an accident where he fell out of his berth in a train, and he went to see his doctor afterward because he was having this chronic, like, low-grade pain, and the doctor told him to drink this thing called Radithor, which was a bottle of patent medicine that had high concentrations of radium in it. And over
first generation Nuka-Cola.
Nuka-Cola here. But over a course of 3 years, he drank more than 1,400 bottles of this stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And by the time that he finally stopped, his bones were so badly weakened that they had to remove most of his jaw. He had abscesses in his brain, and there were holes that had started forming in his skull. And this is all from the radium poisoning, which he died of, which is not at all surprising. But they actually had to bury him in a lead-lined coffin because of how radioactive he was.
Huh. I kind of wanted to know how strong how much radium did the drink actually contain. But I suppose it was a significant portion, because...
Yeah, I couldn't find any details about that. All I could find is that they said high concentration, which is kind of non-specific. But it actually could get worse.
After drinking 1,400 bottles of it, even
oh my gosh,
a not so high concentration would be a hell of an aggregate.
Yeah, but I mean, Finland is really close to the bedrock, so there's a lot of radium in the air in Finland everywhere. So it's not all that hazardous, though. People who have ground cellars have to have radium detectors there, because
Did I hear you say it could be worse?
It could be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could be, instead of Eben McDonald's Taco, whatever his name was, you could be Cecil Kelly, who was a chemical operator at the Los Alamos plutonium processing facility. On December 30th, 1958, he was working with a mixing tank that contained plutonium-laced water. And normally this tank, the water was supposed to be in a ratio of less than 0.1 grams of plutonium per liter of water, but for some reason, the concentration on December 30th was 200 times higher than it's supposed to be. So when he went to turn on the stir to stir everything up and start processing it, the water formed into a vortex, and the plutonium separated out into a layer that went critical. It actually started having nuclear chain reactions, and it released a huge burst of neutrons and gamma radiation that lasted for just 200 microseconds. But he had been viewing the contents of the tank through this little glass viewing window on the side of the tank, and in shock, he fell off the ladder, and people heard him fall. They thought he just tripped or something, but they went and found him shouting incoherently, and the only thing that they could understand him saying was, I'm burning up, over and over and over again. They rushed him to the hospital. He was semi-conscious, vomiting, puking, hyperventilating. When he got to the hospital, all of his bodily excretions, his sweat, his vomit, everything was radioactive enough to give a reading on a Geiger counter. 2 hours after the accident, his condition improved and he regained coherence a little bit, but it was soon pretty clear that he wouldn't survive for long. They did tests on him that showed that his bone marrow had been destroyed, The pain in his abdomen became difficult to control in spite of all the medication they gave him, and he died 35 hours after the accident. So that's kind of scary. Actually, as I was reading this, there's a lot of stories about people accidentally making stuff go critical. Like there were people, I think, during the Manhattan Project who were trying to come up with a sort of shielding based on lead metal alloy bricks that they would put around a plutonium core. And I guess they were trying to figure out a way to deflect neutrons based on piling bricks around this thing, and the guy found out that the arrangement he had made it so if he had put down one more brick, the thing would have gone critical, and he dropped it. He dropped a brick on the thing, and it released a whole shit ton of radiation on him, and he died from that too.
God.
Yeah. And apparently the same core actually killed somebody the year before in a similar accident that made it go partially critical. And I think they called it the demon core or the devil core or something like that as a result because it was killing people.
I'm just thinking. I want to say now, since it's recorded for posterity, if I have received some extremely high dose of radiation and it becomes obvious I'm not going to survive, don't let me spend 35 hours getting there. Just dose me the hell up with something. Like, yeah. How much morphine do you have? Yes, please. Like, I will take all of it.
Enough.
But I guess
I want to mention quickly about the Radium Girls. There's an excellent episode of Stuff You Missed in History class I listened to a couple years ago about that. That's what brought that to mind last week. So go listen to that, people, if you have an opportunity.
Yeah.
But I wonder, why didn't he just become the Incredible Hulk or something? He got gamma radiation. That's how comics work, right?
Because he wasn't Bruce Banner, he didn't have that factor that the gamma radiation triggered. So yeah, I think that's the new explanation for the Hulk is it triggered some genetic thing in him. Oh, I don't know, whatever. I don't read comic books enough to know that. So but yeah, at least radiation poison is relatively uncommon. You know, you hear these stories, but they're few and far between. There's some pretty bad stuff out there that can spread pretty quickly if we don't get a handle on them. And in some cases, it's partially our fault that they exist in the first place. Of course, the big one to think about are superbugs. You know, these diseases and pathogens that, as a result of mutation due to overuse of antibiotics or whatever, they've gained antibiotic resistance or other means of defending themselves and infecting people that are making them extremely hard to handle.
Nice segue.
Oh, that's a nice segue. That was beautiful. I'm touched.
It was until you fucking commented on it.
Yeah, but you can edit that out, see? Isn't that the lovely part of it? Now that we do editing? Let's talk about some of those superbugs, shall we? So the first one,
we shall.
methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, commonly known as MRSA. This is one that, I guess about 72 hours after infection is when it substantially takes hold in human tissues and becomes resistant to treatment at that point. So it begins as small red bumps. They resemble pimples or spider bites or boils. They can be accompanied by fever and occasionally rashes. Over the course of a few days, the bumps become larger and more painful. They even open into deep pus-filled boils. MRSA infections can spread, infecting vital organs and lead to widespread infection, toxic shock syndrome, and necrotizing pneumonia, which is one of the dreaded flesh-eating viruses that you might be somewhat familiar with. So that's awful and disgusting. So you can just imagine, like, oh, I have these bumps that are really painful and irritating, and now, wait a minute, they're growing and my skin's just rotting away. How awful. It's not very common, but I guess it doesn't have to be very common for it to be kind of scary.
That's kind of like becoming a zombie, I suppose. You get some flesh-eating bacteria.
So here, talk about here's a super bug that's super bad. Super gonorrhea. That sounds...
That wasn't a good segue.
Super duper.
So this is a sexually transmitted bacterial infection. Basically it's just gonorrhea. And why is it super gonorrhea? Because now there's a strain of gonorrhea that is resistant to traditional treatments.
I bet this is what James Bond has.
It's possible.
James
So
Bond has ultra gonorrhea.
ultra gonorrhea. So let's talk about some of the symptoms of this. Burning sensation while urinating for males and females. A white, yellow, or green discharge from the penis. Swollen
Don't mind
or
me, I'm just
painful
going to continue
testicles,
eating here.
which is less common but apparently happens. Increased vaginal discharge, which I'm guessing only happens in women in this case. But
Don't judge.
Don't judge. Vaginal bleeding between periods. For men and women, a rectal form of gonorrhea. Go ahead.
Vaginal bleeding in the middle of a sentence?
Yes. Just suddenly, oh shit, I'm bleeding. I suppose that's how that works. I don't know.
The joke was lost.
Yeah, it was. I should have just shut up and let you run with it. So the rectal form of super gonorrhea, rectal discharge, itching, soreness, bleeding, and painful bowel movements. So long-term symptoms. Now imagine these long-term symptoms as symptoms that just never ever go away because you can't treat it. Scar tissue that blocks fallopian tubes, ectopic pregnancy, which is pregnancy outside the womb. And someone needs to explain this to me because how the fuck is that possible? I don't understand.
It can happen in the fallopian tubes, or the egg could not make it into the womb and get fertilized somewhere. I guess, I don't know. Brandy might have more information about this.
Jesus. That sounds all kinds of terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Okay.
I think it's pretty dangerous to have a pregnancy outside of the womb.
I can imagine, yeah. Also, infertility, long-term abdominal pelvic pain, pain in the tubes attached to the testicles. I guess that would... I don't know if that's just the
They're called
boss.
the test tubes.
The test tubes. Ba-dum-ching! Sterility in men is more rare, apparently, than not. Increased risk of HIV and AIDS, and also the really bad consequence, it can spread to your blood and joints and cause a life-threatening infection. So
yeah, this will be my PSA for the week. Use condoms, please.
So some other superbugs, Staphylococcus aureus, also known as the staph infection. I guess that one's also pretty commonly known. That's another tissue-destroying infection that can cause a frighteningly wide array of complications. That's another one that can cause, I think, can cause rotting tissue or tissue degeneration, if I'm not mistaken. Streptococcus and Enterococcus, those are yet more tissue-destroying infections that will fuck your shit up. It's kind of like MRSA in a way. These are things that once the infection sets in, it starts eating away the skin that is infected, and it's often treated by removing large amounts of tissue or even entire limbs to prevent it spreading to the rest of the body. There was an episode of Frontline that I watched about 4 months ago, I think it was, on superbacteria, and they had a couple cases of one of these. I don't know which bacterial strain it was, but some guy had basically just fallen down and gotten hurt, and as it turns out, he ends up getting his leg amputated or something to prevent the spread of this bacteria. It's pretty terrible.
Are you sure you weren't watching 127 Hours?
I might have been. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that. That's the movie about the guy that gets his hand caught in the rock in the canyon, right?
James Franco.
Sure. Also, Clostridium difficile. It's a pathogen that causes widespread diarrheal disease in hospitals worldwide. So I guess this is like you poop yourself and your neighbors to death.
I'm reminded of those doomed cruise ships from a couple years ago.
Oh, yes!
The poop ships.
What if it was...
yeah. They were stranded in the Caribbean Ocean or something, right?
What if it's radium Clostridium difficile, so it's like glowing explosive diarrheal death, right? Huh? There's a movie to be made of that. Somebody? Nothing? Okay, moving on. So, salmonella...
I think it's enough to have diarrhea from just one source.
I'm just thinking, like, not only is it that, it also glows in the dark. Right?
And I suppose the bacteria would be killed by the radiation too, unless they are super bacteria.
Touché, sir. So also Salmonella and E. coli. I was not aware that these were considered antibiotic resistant, but apparently that's the case, or at least somewhat. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, or tuberculosis. There's a super strain of that now. That's increasing around the globe, especially in developing countries over the past few years. Symptoms of tuberculosis include chronic cough, blood-tinged sputum or spit. So if you ever saw Tombstone, that's like the classic example, like Val Kilmer's character playing Doc Holliday when he coughs up and there's blood on the handkerchief. Also, fever, night sweats, and weight loss are other symptoms of tuberculosis or super tuberculosis.
So we may actually get this disease basically back into our societies now that it's been.
It hasn't been gone. It's just been greatly reduced.
Yeah, it's been rare. And
I worked at a place not quite, a little less than 20 years ago, that there was a person that worked in this big production facility that had been diagnosed with tuberculosis, and so a number of people had to get a tuberculosis test done in case they had been, if they had been potentially in contact with him or near enough to him.
Yeah, I know that there occasionally are places where you need to test for tuberculosis. Yeah.
So how about another terrifying way to die? Poisoning?
Poison, good.
I guess it can be as simple as like food poisoning. Botulism can be fatal in a number of cases, but the one particular one I want to mention, I've just recently finished a book about Richard Kuklinski, also known as the Iceman, who was a kind of well-known hitman and just awful human being. He would murder people either by contract or just because he thought they pissed him off. One of his favorite ways to kill people, hit-style, contracted kills, was with cyanide. And so cyanide poisoning, it's a form of histotoxic hypoxia because the cells of organisms are unable to use oxygen. And different ways to be poisoned by cyanide: inhalation, ingestion, absorption through the skin, injection, etc. Cyanide's really effective, and I don't know if it still is, but at least for a long time it was used in gas chambers for executions in American prisons, and presumably elsewhere, but I know here in the U.S. anyway. So Kuklinski, one of his favorite ways to kill people was using cyanide, and two of the ways that he talked about having done it many times was spiking someone's food with it. There's one particular case where he had gone and grabbed hamburgers for himself and his crew. One of them was marked to be killed, and it was a hamburger without pickles on it. That was the one with cyanide, so don't take that one. And so this particular guy eats the burger and starts dying. The cyanide wasn't killing him fast enough, so they also strangled him with a cord from a lamp in a motel room there.
Pleasant.
Yeah.
Yep.
A couple other ways he would do it. He would go to a bar and put cyanide in liquid form in a glass, and he'd bump into somebody pretending like he was just drunk and spill the drink on them. Make a quick brief apology, stumble away. No one really notices the drunk guy that spilled something on someone, and they just kind of brush it off. A few minutes later, the cyanide absorbs through the skin, and the person starts to die, and they think, oh, he's having a heart attack or something.
Yeah, and I think this is pretty much a spy movie favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it, but these are all things in real life. Yeah. And the other one was to have someone in a spray bottle, and you fake a sneeze, and when you fake the sneeze, you spray it in their face, and so they inhale it, and it's almost immediate. He would say that people would fall down and they'd clutch at their throat or start thrashing about. So there's that. There's certainly plenty other types of poisoning. That's the one I wrote up on this because it's the most recent one I had read about. So.
Yeah, I think the threshold for cyanide is so low that it's very deadly.
Mm-hmm. So anybody know anything about defenestration?
Throwing someone out of a window?
Yeah, that's right. It's just that simple. Defenestration is the fancy way of saying throwing someone or something out of a window. I guess you can include, and for our purposes, you could just include falling from a great height in general. But I have a few examples from history.
Would you call when Jaime Lannister throws the Stark kid out of the window? Would you call that defenestration?
That is defenestration. Yes.
The child was basically already out the window.
Defenestration?
Yeah, he just helps a little.
It occurred to me this morning, I heard defenestration. I was like, so is that when you accidentally castrate yourself trying to climb over a tall fence? Like, nothing? Okay, moving on.
No.
So some historical examples of defenestration. In the year 1203, King John's nephew, Arthur of Brittany, was defenestrated by King John himself from the castle at Rouen, France, which of course made me think of the great scene from Braveheart where he throws his son's lover/advisor out the window. 1383, Bishop Don Martino was defenestrated by the citizens of Lisbon, Portugal. He had been suspected of conspiring with the Castilians who had besieged Lisbon, and so he met a... What? Damn it, what? I saw your tilde. Thank you very much.
Martino?
Martino.
Did you want me to redo it and pronounce it properly?
No, we'll just go with the 510 version as usual.
Bishop Dom Martino. Anyway, moving on. June 27th, 1844. An armed mob with blackened faces stormed Carthage jail, where Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith were being held. Hiram, who was trying to secure the door, was killed instantly with a shot to the face. Smith fired a pepper box pistol. I don't know what a pepper box pistol is. Then sprang for the window. He was shot multiple times before falling out the window, crying, "Oh Lord, my God!"
Oh Lord, my God!
Just like that.
I think Mike Bowler could tell us what that kind of a pistol is, because he's from the era, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Actually, I probably can. I'm not from that era, but I've actually been to Carthage. It's in Carthage, Illinois. This is the founders of the Mormon religion.
Oh yeah, I should have probably.
You should have said it, yeah. But
Yeah,
they
I guess I
were,
could have expanded on that a bit, huh?
yeah. Well,
A pepperbox pistol is a multiple barrel pistol that revolves around the barrels revolve around a central axis.
All right. So an old form of a revolver, then. Gotcha.
Basically, yeah.
All right. So anyway, he died shortly after hitting the ground, but was shot several times more before the mob dispersed. So they got their justice in, I suppose. June 11th, 1903, a group of Serbian army officers murdered and defenestrated King Alexander and Queen Draga.
So a drag queen?
I'm going with that, yes.
Dragon Queen.
In 1911, during the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, 1911, during the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, numerous people died after leaping from or falling out of windows. I recommend another episode of Stuff You Missed in History Class on the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. It was interesting and terrible. And on this note, fire. Terrible way to die. I did not do it right up on any section of this, and now I wonder why I hadn't. But yeah, it's a pretty terrible way to die.
If you're going to choose fire, jumping out a window, I mean, really there's not much of a choice there.
Yeah, I think there were several Supermen on 9/11 too who decided that it would be better to jump out than burn alive.
Yeah,
Please send your feedback, hate mail, or death threats to feedback@irreverentskeptics.com.
Subject line WTF Erno.
In 1977, as a result of political backlash, 1977, as a result of political backlash against his album Zombie, Fela Kuti's mother was thrown from a window during a military raid on his compound, the Kalakuta Republic. Oh, I really fucked that up, didn't I? Oh, for fuck's sake. Can I just start this one over again?
Fire away, Captain.
Okay, one more time. 1977, as a result of political backlash against his album Zombie, Fela Kuti's mother was thrown from a window during a military raid on his compound, the Kalakuta Republic, by 1,000 Nigerian soldiers. That's a lot of people to be in one room to throw someone from a window. I'm just saying.
I think they took turns. They just carried her up the stairs again and again, so they'd all get a turn.
Or all but the last ones, they just two of them would swing her 1, 2, no, next guys, 1, 2, no, next guy. Anyway, the injury sustained from the fall led to her death days later. That sucks. In addition, the commanding officer defecated on her head while the soldiers burned down the compound, destroying his musical equipment, studio, and master tapes, and jailing him for being a subversive.
So I wonder what
there's that.
what the song "Zombie" was about. Album "Zombie" was about. I suppose it's some kind of a political album, because it wouldn't have provided much hatred if it was just something like I love you, baby.
I would assume
good
it's something
point.
like that. Yeah.
So more recently, 1993, Toronto lawyer Gary Hoy fell to his death after attempting to demonstrate the strength of his office tower's windows. I should not laugh at this.
Yes,
I
The
read
picture I had is,
about
watch how strong these are.
I read about this somewhere else. I don't remember where.
I
But I
picture this with him like slapping a window and then the Wilhelm scream behind it.
I'm pretty sure the Mythbusters did this actually, because there was the myth about a guy jumping out a window, and they wanted to see if you could
might have
actually
been
just
the
run and jump out a
Mythbusters.
window, and I don't remember how they tested it, but yeah, it did turn out to be a true story, of course. Yeah.
Also, in this case, I'm guessing like had it just not been very well secured, it could happen.
Yeah, but
And lastly, within the last year, I read this story about a couple who were having sex against the window of their high-rise apartment
Yes.
window in China, I think it was. Is that right?
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
China. Definitely.
The window gave way and they fell to their deaths. Like,
What a way to
last one
go!
laughing about like, haha, that's funny, and this one's like, that's not cool, man. That's
Most epic death ever.
I suppose so.
What is a better way to die than to be having sex midair, in free fall, and going like, yeah, we're going to die, but yeah.
There was another story related. A couple decided to get frisky up in a tree, and the guy fell out and broke his penis when he landed.
That hurt my penis.
Ow.
Damn mirror neurons.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Like, I'm gonna have to stick my thumb up my own ass and yell snake. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Wait, what?
You heard me.
Snake?
Nice segue.
So how about some?
Use the shit out of your girlfriend.
Yeah. How about some quick hits on scary ways to die? I'll take that as a yes.
Woo!
Let's go, bitches.
Quick hits. So, McElroy, hit us up with some quick hits. What do you think?
Well, one way I've always been scared of dying is by drowning. I used to have a lot of nightmares as a kid when I was where I would drown. Like sometimes we'd be driving along and we'd cross a bridge and the bridge would be out partway across and I'd end up getting caught in the car and dying. That was unpleasant. So
That would be unpleasant indeed. How about a plane crash? That would suck.
No,
Yeah.
it wouldn't. Like dying in a hospital bed of cancer, like let's say something inoperable, like brain cancer. You're not really yourself. You're just drooling, shitting yourself. That would be the worst way to go. It would take you something like 6 months to die, just being in complete agony while it presses against the part of your brain that deals in pain.
While I agree with you on that, I'm just going to say, like, your plane rushing towards the ground at high speed would be scary. Like, so that would
For a few
indeed be a
seconds.
scary way to die. Well, here's one. How about
Yeah.
Ebola?
Ebola is pants-shittingly terrifying.
Yeah, that, like, oh, I'm bleeding from the everything. I'm dying.
Yes. My everything is leaking. My everything.
I've got holes that I didn't
My
have
everything
before.
My everything is leaking me. Like, I am literally bleeding myself out onto the ground.
I used to have organs, and now I have liquids.
Religious sacrifice and martyrdoms. So, like, I guess one that a lot of people are familiar with, the Aztecs cutting the hearts out of their sacrifices while they're still
But I
alive.
think some of them were volunteers. Not all of them were just like captured slaves, although I suppose that was part of the ritual too. But I think some of them were.
The majority were captured, were captives, and I forget what the number was per day that they did. It was unbelievable, at least for
I
some
know that-
time.
In that culture, it was considered an honor to die as a sacrifice to the gods, so people would be very happy to go to their death. As
Yeah, I know there
if
were
you were part of that
volunteers.
culture, but if you were captured as not part of that culture, you're like, this ain't cool with me. Like, I'm not down with
It's
this.
just Barry from the next city over. Hey, guys, what's going on? It's a nice ball game you got going on here. Can I play?
Another
Hey, guys,
one we
you
were.
get to be honored today. Ooh, I do? What's a knife for?
Yeah.
Am I getting a buffet dinner?
Yeah, another horrible way to die is the way we were taught to kill people in the military is that you shoot for the gut, because that takes you about 20 minutes to die.
Oh, Jesus.
So you're taking out 3 soldiers at once, because they are going to evacuate the guy who's shot in the belly. He won't recover because it's such a nasty wound, and it will take time. So
So
they'll
in
be
Finland,
dragging
when-
him.
Isn't that also though
about to die.
you're most likely to be able to hit center body mass anyway, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's an easy shot. Yeah, a headshot takes out 1 soldier. A gut shot takes 3.
Finland now scares the shit out of me.
What does?
Efficiency, almost
Finland.
German-like.
So how about being mauled to death by a bear or a tiger? I remember sort of that guy known as the Grizzly Man.
Yeah.
Was way too friendly with the Grizzlies, and then eventually the Grizzlies were like, "Oh yeah, we're not buddies," and they.
Yeah.
Didn't he make what he thought was a grizzly-proof suit, and he used it and got killed?
I don't. Well, that could be, but at least when he was killed, I'm pretty sure he was asleep when he got attacked. He was in a tent. I think that's right.
There was a movie about him,
Mhm.
a documentary about him, and it ends with him them mentioning that he had died. So
Yeah. Also, maybe being. I'm looking at my girlfriend's dog, thinking, "What if I was mauled to death by a chihuahua?" Like, that'd be terrifying, just because how damn long it would take. Like, can we just get this over with? Like, it's been 3 days already, and you're only up half my leg. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So some others tortured to death.
yeah,
Yeah,
Dorothy
like the
Underwood.
bamboo shoot thing is pretty scary
Oh,
to me.
Jesus. Yes. Fuck.
It sounds horrible, having a bamboo grow under you. That's, I suppose they are supposed to be so pointed that they can go through a person. So,
Yeah.
yeah, at
Punji
least
sticks. That's those punji sticks. That's what those are called.
At least our urban legends tell us that it was used by whatever the guys were that you were fighting against in Vietnam.
The Viet Cong, yeah.
The commies.
Saying her
Damn it.
dad.
Them damn commies. Let's see. Oh yeah, there was the case not too long ago of the girl who was raped to death in India on a bus.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm not going to
Fuck
talk
you, John.
about that. That makes my stomach lurch just thinking about that story. It's just unbelievably terrible. Here's one Brandy mentioned the other day. How about not just being buried alive, but like in a grain silo, when you get sucked down underneath the grain in a silo and get suffocated by that?
Yeah.
That's
Or any-
pretty nasty.
Or
I'm
any
just gonna
type of
say-
industrial accident. I mean, working in some of these refineries, there's one place where they told us, yeah, you wear your fireproof getup, but they say that the only reason why they make you wear that because they have, in case something goes wrong, they have something to identify after the accident.
Fuck that job. That's what I'm thinking. Like, fuck that job.
Or going through a paper machine that's on crawl. You usually have either full drive or crawl, and the crawl is like a few meters a minute. So that could get your like a sleeve or something caught between the rolls. A paper machine has a ton of rolls, so called the thing between the rolls is called a nip. And yeah, if you get your hand caught in one of those, you have time to think about what you've done, how stupid you were, and you're going to die because no one's going to be able to stop a few ton of machine from killing you.
Are there no safety cutoffs for that machine?
Sure, but think about it.
It's
How
so fast.
Yeah, how many
Fast.
seconds does it take for someone to reach that, and then for
Well, you said at a crawl, though. Like,
yeah,
but
but
at a crawl, then like, don't you have many seconds for someone to reach that? Like,
yeah,
Well, with the,
no, I
inertia-
do agree with you though. It is terrifying. Like,
but
don't
you
get
also
wrong,
have you also have to recognize that to stop a ton of steel from rolling takes a while, even with the brakes on.
what is it like 2-3 seconds? Come on.
Yeah.
Physics, whatever that's all about.
actually, you want a real gory story?
I do.
I do.
Go on.
Here we go.
Yeah, porn, torture porn.
Okay, this was in a dog food plant, and the wet food, you know, the stuff you buy in cans, and I worked on this equipment, so I know it pretty well. Well, when they started using, when they started in full production, every night they would clean this grinder up. It was a machine that's supposed to mix the meat after it's all blended. And the operators figured out a few things. One, if there's these safety, they had a cover, but if you put wood wedges under the safety switches, you could keep the lid open and see what's going on. And so if they needed to add any extra animal parts to make the dog food, they could do it. Well, on top of it, the way the system was programmed, the system integrator had this setup that instead of using ladder logic, they used a drum sequencer to do this, and that's probably the contributing part to this, because they didn't believe in e-stops or emergency stops. Well, one night they were cleaning. This guy was in there cleaning the machine, and he would actually crawl inside to scrub the inside of this mixer grinder thing, where there's actually there's these large arms, and then there's these screw conveyors in the bottom that takes everything and pushes it into a pipe to get it to the size of the can. Well, this guy was inside. The computer program was still running, thinking, I'm just waiting for 50 pounds of meat to fall in. Well, he's fully inside this thing. All of a sudden, the machine took off. And when someone realized it, they went and hit the e-stop, and nothing happened. So they're scrambling around trying to find anything to shut it off. They eventually found a disconnect that they could shut the machine off. But by this time, the guy was halfway into the pipe, ground up and shoved into the pipe.
Jesus.
And it was like I hate to, it is a typical accident, because a lot of times people are bypassing safeties. There's guards on equipment, safety bars, whatever, and even the
I've definitely done that too. So
yeah,
I'm not any better. Right.
And actually I did question it, but the engineers kept saying, "Oh, it's okay. It's because there's no this is." I always like having hardwire e-stops. That is, where when you hit that e-stop, the power kills to everything, and then you have to basically reset everything. Well, a lot of these places, they want to keep running, so you hit an e-stop, it shuts off whatever, and but then when they pull the e-stop out, everything starts up again. And I really hate that way of that train of thought, but a lot of these places are like that, and people are getting hurt from this. And I mean, I raised the question, and they says, "Oh yeah, everything's okay. The programmers know what they're doing, so on." Well, no, they didn't. It's like, and someone had to die to figure out that something was done wrong.
Statistically, at least in Finland, most common industrial accident is being crushed by something. I suppose that would be counted as being crushed, even though that there was kind of a different circumstances. But right. Usually it's something like a crate or a box or something falling on you, something heavy falling on you, or what the hell are those? Forklift. Yeah, forklift. That's the word. Yeah, forklift crushing you behind a wall or something. The forklift driver doesn't see you or something. You're being crushed. Yeah. Wouldn't want to die in an industrial accident either. Because.
So I want to say the common thing in a lot of the refineries is oxygen deprivation. When they work inside tanks, sometimes.
So they go and clean, and they don't have anyone watching the silo or whatever, the container from outside, and then they suffocate.
Right, and then usually what happens? Well, it's either there's no oxygen, or there's a leak. Like some of them have been leaks of nitrogen purges, so you're going into a nitrogen environment, and then usually what happens is the guys that are helping. They decide they're going to jump in the tank also to rescue their buddy, and then they drop, and then because I think there was one in Indiana where that happened, where a guy was he dropped the whole watch, decided he was going to go in and get the guy out, thinking he can get in and out real quick. Well, he dropped. A third guy went in, and then by that time the rescue teams had showed up, and so they had to pull 3 bodies out instead of just one.
Yeah, they had something similar in Finland a few years ago, I think. There were 2 guys clearing out the tank, and the other one was watching and tried to save the other one, and they both perished in the...
Yeah. But yeah, those are the common ones. There's refineries, you get fires. Those aren't so bad unless you're in a crude unit with a really bad situation, and those usually those don't really oil refineries don't react well to fire. And if
no shit.
No.
Yeah. I'm trying to think some of the other fun ones. Usually those are the main ones. I know in a lot of the refineries I've worked in, they've got really serious. I mean, anyone going into a hole, there's you're trained. There's a trained hole watch. He's the guy who's, in case something goes wrong, he has to call. If the guy's on a lanyard that has a winch, he can pull them out if necessary.
Also, I'm pretty sure that's a guy that's on a porn production crew. The whole watch.
That's a fluffer. That's a fluffer, I think.
That's a different member.
Yeah, that's a different member.
It's a different kind of member.
But yeah, any type of industrial accident, that's what kind of about I worry about.
Yeah, it's pretty much my again when I return to work now in a few days. It's probably the one thing I'm most scared of is an industrial accident.
So we have a couple comments in the Q&A here.
Oh, you just beat me to it.
Relevant to Mike's story of the dog food factory, Susan Price says, "Thank you, Mike Bowler. My dog will never get wet food again, ever."
Caesar Dog Food uses the same dog as I have in their logo, so I have to feed the very nice
it's very
kind of
deceptive.
wet
Dog
food.
with a dog on the logo. I mean, they have tuna fish cans with tuna on the logo. What am I supposed to think I'm eating here?
Tastes like kibble and underpaid employee.
I really don't know if this is true, but I've heard that they actually sometimes use euthanized animals because they are pretty much cheap protein for the dried dog foods. But yeah,
Well, most of the dry
I
stuff,
don't want to propagate a urban myth, but that's what I've heard.
Oh no.
well,
Also
there's
on the Q&A, Susan says, "Hi guys, hi."
Hi.
Hello, Susan.
Oh,
actually a lot of the dog food, the dry stuff is mostly grains and stuff like that. It's the chicken digest that is the mystery to me. I don't know how that comes about. I heard it's leftover chicken that doesn't make it to a nugget, ends up getting thrown into a vat of acid. It's broken down, and that's it.
Well, dogs will eat just about anything.
I was subscribed to Chicken Digest for a while. I really loved the articles. There were
Yeah.
features about the latest pecking habits.
Right.
That was clever.
In our chat here, Brandy was talking about the Marathon plant in Detroit, that guys there wouldn't wear their Type 3 respirators while they were cleaning asbestos from the Marathon plant.
That's just stupid.
That's stupid. That's very
Well,
stupid.
it's a scary way to die. It's stupid that happened, but that would be a scary way to die. That would suck. I worked, similarly, I worked many years ago in welding, a steelworking plant, and I was a welder. And there were a lot of guys there that wouldn't wear hearing protection when they would weld on aluminum. They wouldn't wear respirators for the aluminum welding, and just a number of other things that the attitude was very macho, like, oh, I'm tough because I won't do this thing. Like, these guys would use the overhead cranes and move 8-ton pieces of metal and stand way too close to it and not observe the safety regulations because they thought it made them look tough. That was the attitude they seemed to have, was it made them look tough. And I just thought, yeah, you look great until the thing falls on you and squashes you. Like, then all that machismo is for nothing. Like, yeah, fuck all that. Like, those are all scary things. I did not last long in that job. I think I did 18 months there before I looked around. Like, all these guys that have been here 10 plus years have skin problems or a tumor, or they can't hear very well, or something. It's like I would go home with, I get nosebleeds and headaches a lot, and there's just like this black, I don't know what it was, black stuff that would accumulate in my nostrils, and I'd blow my nose, and it was all black, and I was just like, yeah, fuck this. Like, this is not the job for me.
Yeah, I would never go under one of those things that lift, heavy things that run on beams in the roof. I don't know what the word for it is in.
Yeah,
English.
we just call them overhead cranes, but yeah, that's exactly what we had.
Yeah, so I would never go under anything that's on one of those, because I saw a full reel of paper, like a huge machine reel of paper, go down in a pit, the calendar pit of a paper machine, and just sheared these steel structures that were on its way, and it just bent and sheared them like there's no tomorrow. I don't know what the weight of that machine reel was, but I mean, God, if there had been anyone anywhere near that, they'd probably been hurt or killed.
I had a really close call one time where, long story short, there's this big heavy piece of metal that I had it propped up on one side with a crane, and I was moving chains, and I'm trying to turn it over, and my boss is there with the forklift. It's a long process we had. Anyway, at one point you have to take the chains and throw them over the deal so they don't get caught. So I walk up to it, and I leaned forward to toss the chains over, and as I leaned forward, the piece that it was connected to snapped off, and this thing dropped right in front of me, not even a foot from the end of my toes. I mean, inches from the end of my toes. And had I just walked up on that thing to toss those chains in there, I don't even know what that would have done. Certainly would have broken my legs, if not worse. Yeah, screw all that. I don't fault anyone for having that job. I just would say it is not for me. And I'm glad there are some people who are all kinds of cool with that. I am not that guy. So let's move on to our what's for the week. What?
Are we going to talk about the big statue of a devil?
We are going to talk about the big statue of a devil. Yeah.
I think our most heathen, satanic Michael McElroy is going to tell us all about it.
Full disclosure, I am not a Satanist, but okay, whatever.
This even broke the news.
You say you're an atheist. What's the difference? Yes, I know better.
Come on, John. I'm the only one who pretends to be an apologist around here.
Oh, that's right. I apologize.
Okay, now.
Moving on.
So back in, I think it was January or February, there was a Ten Commandments monument that went up on the State House lawn in Oklahoma City, and there was a big uproar about it because they were showing favoritism towards Christianity, which is unconstitutional in the United States. So
no, they were showing favoritism towards Judaism, which is the part of the Bible that it's from.
Well, I would say Christianity because they left out the other 613 or 603 commandments. So.
Oh yeah, true that.
Yeah. Having just recently moved from Oklahoma, I can tell you, no, there was a monument to Christianity.
Yeah.
I assure you.
In response to this Ten Commandments monument, a Satanist group commissioned a statue of, I don't know why everyone keeps saying it's the devil. It's not the devil. It's Baphomet. It's this goat-headed figure that has been misinterpreted by Christians as the devil. It's supposed to be this figure of wisdom and knowledge or whatever. But anyway, they commissioned a statue to be put up at the State House alongside the Ten Commandments monument, and they raised money through some crowdsourcing website like Kickstarter or something like that. And it's being built in New York City right now, the statue is. Photos have come up in the last week of this statue, which are kind of amazing.
Is the State House anywhere near Animal House?
No. Animal House? No.
Robot House?
So, the leader of the group behind the statue says they've raised $20,000 for the project online, which is pretty good. The figure is it's as it is now. It's just a clay mold, but they're planning to pour bronze onto it and make a bronze statue out of it. It's this just a goat-headed dude on a throne next to a pentagram in a circle with he's got like two fingers up in the air and he has children smiling lovingly up at him. It's kind of fantastic.
Really well. If you take the religious context aside, it's a really well done statue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was
Well,
kind of pretty.
it's a statue, but I think just
It's a thing.
from an objective, non-artistic critic perspective, I think this is just absolutely hilarious. Because this is, we live in a country where there's freedom of religion, and if we're going to have one display on a state lawn somewhere, we've got to be willing to accept everyone's displays, right? Or just not have any displays at all. That would be the easy way out of this. But no, I guess an official spokesman for Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin said, "There will never be a satanic monument on the grounds of the Oklahoma State Capitol, and the suggestion that there might be is absurd." So much for the Constitution when it comes to that guy. Apparently, they're not the only ones who've put together a monument, though. There's a Hindu leader in Nevada who wants to put a monument up at the Capitol, and there's an animal rights group that wants to, and the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster would also like a monument. But however,
Obviously, great noodleness.
yes, his noodly appendages, yes. But apparently there's a lawsuit pending over the monument, and in the meantime, the Oklahoma Capitol Preservation Commission put a moratorium on new monuments until the lawsuit is completed. So
No shit.
even though this statue is being built for tens of thousands of dollars, it's not going to go anywhere until at least
It's not going anywhere.
this lawsuit is over.
It's not going up there. I will be surprised if it ever actually is put on the grounds of the Capitol there.
If
But
they
This is
completing
not a matter.
will
This
be
is not a statement
glorious.
of what's right or wrong. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't. Really, my position is I don't
Oklahoma.
really give a shit. I'm just saying in that state, it's probably not going to happen.
We're talking
Yeah.
Oklahoma here. Oklahoma is very
I bet it's not happening.
It's a very religious state. However, the unfortunate thing is the news coverage you get about Oklahoma. You would, if you had never been there, you'd have the impression like, wow, you go to this place and someone's just going to throw Jesus in your face. Actually, no, I never heard anyone. There was hardly any talk about religion in general. Like people weren't just walking around praising Jesus left and right and telling you that you're a heathen.
the
It's
politics.
not like that. It's just the
politics in
yes.
Oklahoma are very religious. They're on another level
That's
from
the grandstand.
the rest of the
and
country.
Their form of grandstanding in Oklahoma is using religion as their platform, and they do it very well there. And yeah, it's otherwise it's a very nice place. I highly recommend visiting or living there. Just
Yeah. So I can't say I'm surprised that the governor's spokesperson said this is.
no, not at all. No, not even a little bit.
But of course, if they actually do decide to try to block this, then there's going to be legal repercussions, I'm sure.
hmm So there's another what? So Florida is legitimately, and I put that in finger quotes, preparing for a zombie apocalypse.
There's that many people using bath salts there?
Oh!
Going
A
on recent state
dominant
bill,
story in
State Bill
2000.
296, which was filed by Senator Jeff Brands last fall. It was the unamended title began with an act related to carrying a concealed weapon or firearm. So apparently, who's the other guy here? Rick Grimes wanted to amend this. If I'm
Rick
reading this right,
Grimes?
Rick Grimes tried to amend this bill.
You do know that Rick Grimes is one of the characters in The Walking Dead.
That's the Sheriff Rick from The Walking Dead.
Huh.
Yep.
Have
I think you've gotten punked, buddy. Where's the
Oh.
story?
daily.com?
Daily Dot?
Yeah, I don't know. This is something Brandy had shared this on G+, so yeah, I don't know. So apparently that's not the case then. I don't know. But
Skeptics for the win.
Yes, this is
yeah,
definitely a satire
well done
website.
for people who are geeking out on Walking Dead. I quit watching that long ago and never read the comics. So
Is the main character's
if this
name
is a
from
true
Day
story.
One.
so either I've been punked or the state of Florida is being punked.
It may be
I'm
a
guessing
true
it's probably
story.
just
Somebody
me.
who wrote this article on this website decided to have some fun with it.
It could be. I don't know, but I just thought, well, this is going. My conclusion was going to be, yeah, this is going nowhere. So
This was actually an excellent lecture in skepticism, I suppose, because you find one thing that doesn't fit anything, and yeah, everything falls apart.
Yeah, there you go. That's actually really true. Yeah, like, well, here I am, the guy. Like, here's this weird story that doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'm thinking this will go nowhere, reasonably enough. And you guys are like, yeah, that's a joke.
Yeah, but I mean, had it not been for the name and my extensive knowledge of the comic books and the TV series, I suppose it could have gone through.
Of course, it would take a guy from Finland to figure out something that happened here in America. But if you do want
voice of reason.
But if you want a real story to replace that, I'm kind of starting to work on a conspiracy that's happening with the Clippers general GM, whatever, getting.
Oh God, this thing. Yeah.
Please explain.
Yes, tell us about it.
Well, it's just starting to peek its ugly head, so to speak.
Did you say raise its ugly head?
It's raising its ugly head. Yes. It's probably a big gardener snake conspiracy, but anyhow, apparently there. Who was it? I think Rush Limbaugh's already talked about the possibility that Magic Johnson may have paid the girlfriend to release those audios. There's what's the other guy? I mean, they're accusing that this was a setup to get him kicked out of.
Well, it's obviously a setup if she was recording those things.
Right.
That much is obvious.
But whatever the setup is, they're claiming that it was a way for Magic Johnson to get the team at a decent price.
Rush Limbaugh said this, huh?
Rush Limbaugh. I think Alex Jones may have said something about it.
So it was a nigger conspiracy against good old American guy.
Jesus Christ.
Probably, yeah. So it's a working. Again, it looks like
back to.
Oh, Erno. Oh no.
And Magic Johnson isn't all that dark, anyways.
Oh Jesus Christ, God, what's going on right now?
No, please stop now.
Stop! Just stop!
We don't get any niggers in this.
Oh my God! Stop!
Stop now, please.
Does he realize I'm half black?
No, we can hear you, right? Brandy and I have discussed this a number of times recently this week. This whole story. I think we're both in agreement that the guy obviously what he said. Well, actually, what he said in the recording I heard. Now, I may not have heard the whole recording. The recording I heard was pretty mild, but he was already known as, like, he had already been adjudicated as a racist slumlord, more or less, or like.
I think it was he was denying some people rental apartments because they were filthy Latinos or filthy.
Right. My point was this, though, that the only thing I think about this is like. He should be the things that he says in the privacy of his own home should not affect his job or his ability to own a business somewhere. I don't know.
But there was a claim that he was demanding that the female, whoever she was, I don't remember the name, would record all the conversations because he had a hard time remembering some things that he said.
Huh. Well, I had not heard that much. Yeah. I guess my point is just like the things you say in the privacy of your own home, there should be some sanctity there, but I don't know. At the same time, like certainly if he knew he was being recorded, bad move on your part, guy. I don't know. The whole thing, I mostly just don't care because I don't give a shit about basketball, sports ball in general. I just don't care about.
Well, it popped up on my Google alerts as a conspiracy theory, so I'm probably.
That's interesting, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, it's gonna. I think it's gonna get bigger before it gets smaller, though.
Let me know as soon as you hear anything about that and Build-A-Burgers.
Build-A-Burgers, no problem.
That's what I want to know.
Did you say Build-A-Burgers?
Build-A-Burgers.
Build-A-Burger or Build-A-Burgs? Which is it? Build-A-Burg or Build-A-Burger?
Bilderberg.
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 So I found some more background on this zombie apocalypse law here.
Please go
It
on.
is a real law. There was the news story you found. For some reason, they decided to say Florida's own Rick Grimes, which had absolutely nothing to do with the actual story.
Yeah, because Rick Grimes is from
Walking
whatever
Dead.
state Atlanta is in.
Oh, I see that.
Georgia.
Enter their own Rick Grimes,
Yeah.
State Senator Dwight Bullard. Yeah, I just was not reading well.
No, I mean you read it right. For some reason they decided to add that to the story.
Well, that was as a
what you
descriptor, though.
But I'm reading NBC Miami. The headline is Zombie Amendment along with entire concealed guns changes die in Senate. There was a bill backed by the NRA to allow people who lawfully own guns to conceal them during a mandatory evacuation or local emergency. Let's see. I don't really know what the law. It's changing some existing law to extend concealed weapons.
I just want to say that I bet the USA would be the best equipped to deal with a zombie apocalypse.
I don't own any weapons, so I'd be screwed. But no, there was a Democratic Senator Dwight Bullard tried to add an amendment to the bill that would have included in the emergencies where concealed firearms exceptions were allowed the emergency of a zombie apocalypse. So he tried to get zombie apocalypses added to the list of emergencies where you could hide a gun in your person.
Fair enough.
But didn't your whatever National Health Agency thing somewhere put out a guideline for a zombie apocalypse?
The CDC did.
CDC, just for like
a joke,
to get people to notice that they have guidelines for disasters.
Yeah, it was basically a way to get people to think about having an emergency plan and help, like emergency medical kits and stuff like that.
All right, well, I guess that's going to do it for this week of Irreverent Skeptics. Hopefully we'll finally get some feedback, I'm guessing.
We do have one more Q&A here.
Do we have another Q&A?
Susan asks, where do I send hate mail to Erno?
Just send it to my
send your
private
hate mail,
email.
death threats, and other feedback to feedback@irreverentskeptics.com. And if you do send hate mail, I will read it on the next episode. I will address it personally. So please do.
And just to let you know, Mr. Garrison said nigger in one episode of South Park like 20 times, so me saying it like thrice isn't that bad.
It's not okay.
It doesn't make it okay. All right, well, let's go. Well, I guess, Mike Bowler, you want to tell us what's next on Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy? I see you put out your
garter snake.
Your big garter snake
Awesome.
episode. I've not listened to it yet, but I just saw, I think it was yesterday, I got the notification for it.
Yeah, it just came out. It's actually an examine. I try to examine how conspiracy goes together so you can identify the components and how to kind of give you some tools to say, hey, am I listening to looking at something real, or am I looking at some bullshit? So hopefully it helps explain a few things and teach a little bit of skepticism in the process. I'm not sure what my next show is going to be. I'm kind of debating on. I owe a TWA 800 show to a listener, and then a listener wants me to redo the Pearl Harbor conspiracies. So I think that's probably what I'm going to be doing.
Could you elaborate a little? Why does someone want you to redo the Pearl Harbor thing?
That was my one of my early shows where it pretty much sucked, and I actually want to redo those. I like to redo the first three because those were so bad. They're really embarrassing.
And they got me hooked on the show. That's all I'm saying.
It's easy, okay.
It's easy, okay. But yeah, I don't know. But I like to redo those early shows, so it gives me an excuse to do it.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and propose here while we're recording that we do our next episode on zombies and zombie preparedness.
Are we?
I second the motion.
That's fucking sweet.
Sweet. We have reached consensus, I think.
Motion is carried. Zombies have the day.
Excellent. All right. Well, then, until next week. That's you, Arno.
And remember, I have nothing to say this week, because I'm dead.
There.